Good evening, everybody. Our top stories. President Trump did exactly as he promised when he began the arduous task of trying to denuclearize Kim Jong-un's North Korean regime. Kim tried insults and threats rather than honest negotiation, and President Trump withdrew the United States from any further discussion of a summit meeting with the Chinese puppet. Little Rocket Man now faces a stark choice: get serious about denuclearization or face the prospect of obliteration. We take it up tonight with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Congressman Lee Zeldin, who sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And today, the corrupt origins of Spygate revealed, at least to some. Lawmakers from both parties, the so-called Gang of Eight, briefed on the origins of the Obama administration spying on the Trump campaign. The criminal deep state intelligence operation led by Obama's spy masters, making this scandal the worst in American presidential history. We take up the developments in that scandal with former FBI Assistant Director James Kallstrom and Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch. Our top story: President Trump today canceled the planned summit with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, planned for the 12th of next month. President Trump declared that summit ended, and he sent an open letter to Kim this morning after the Chinese pet insulted Vice President Pence and threatened a nuclear showdown with the United States. In his letter, President Trump wrote, "I was very much looking forward to being there with you. Sadly, based on the tremendous anger and open hostility displayed in your most recent statement, I feel it is inappropriate at this time to have this long-planned meeting."
Based on the recent statement of North Korea, I have decided to terminate the planned summit in Singapore on June 12th. I believe that this is a tremendous setback for North Korea and indeed a setback for the world. Our very strong sanctions, by far the strongest sanctions ever imposed, and maximum pressure campaign will continue as it has been continuing. Hopefully, positive things will be taking place with respect to the future of North Korea. But if they don't, we are more ready than we have ever been before.
The president made it clear the U.S. military is prepared to act should Kim provoke or further threaten our allies and the United States. Joining us tonight, Fox News national security strategist, former strategist to President Trump, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka, let's start with the president's decision to withdraw from that June 12th summit and make it very clear that the U.S. military simultaneously is prepared to act. Your thoughts about the president's very clear statement and choice for Kim?
Well, your introductory monologue hit all the key points. Not only was the regime rude and insulting to the White House and to the vice president, they actually threatened nuclear war. This is incredibly important, a point the mainstream media seems to miss. And as such, the president did what he said he would do all along. If the conditions are not ripe for a meaningful meeting, he's going to walk away from the deal. He's always said that. He mentioned it 4 days ago. He wrote it in his book, The Art of the Deal. Never be so vested in a potential deal that you're not prepared to walk away at any point. And North Korea has reverted to type, and they are playing games. And this is the wrong administration to play games with.
And following that, I just want to share this report from the Washington Post, in which they are now reporting North Korea says it is ready to talk to the United States at any time, responding to Trump's cancellation of the summit with Kim Jong-un. I think the expression is, that didn't take long, did it?
Well, if you read the whole letter, the letter is tough at the beginning. Yeah, the president's letter. It's very tough, but in the second half, it's incredibly gracious, and it says, I will sit down and I will talk to you if the conditions change and if you show a willingness to act in good faith. So nothing was closed down today. The right decision was taken, and lo and behold, as your show opens, we hear the news. maybe they've realized the mistake that they made, and it's not going to be the 12th. It may still be Singapore, but the talks may be back on track already, Lou.
It is a very quick response. It is also, as this president has said throughout, we'll see. At every turn and twist, we have watched a duping of one president after another. This president will certainly not follow in that line of presidents. He's made that clear. It is interesting to watch the Secretary of State in this, who started talking yesterday about giving the North Koreans civilian nuclear power. This is reminiscent of what Clinton did, President Bill Clinton did 30 years ago, and it was a disastrous policy change. And I find it stunning that the Secretary of State would even be articulating such a thing.
Well, even the president has offered to give some kind of guarantees to North Korea. And at the end of the day, even if it is a dictatorial regime that persecutes people for their political beliefs, this has to be a two-way conversation.
Wait. So the president hasn't guaranteed in any form nuclear power for civilian authorities in North Korea. And that's quite a different statement, particularly for one of the two largest state sponsors of terrorism on the globe.
No, I'm talking about the security guarantees that he potentially aired. But at the end of the day, something has to be attained by North Korea in exchange. But whatever the deal is, it's not going to be like the JCPOA Iran deal, where, for example, there could be no American inspectors. If there were to be inspections, they had to be announced a month in advance. So I know Mike Pompeo, he walks into these things with his eyes wide open, and he is in large part responsible for why we've got so far with North Korea already.
Well, he's certainly been amongst those. I don't think there's any question that the vast preponderance of the credit goes to this president. And I do find it stunning that Mike Pompeo, in office just a matter of weeks, has already started using the first person singular as if he were working for President Obama rather than President Donald Trump, who is always without exception, in my experience, he talks about America, Americans, we. And suddenly we have a newly minted Secretary of State who is talking about himself in the first person singular. It is, to me, off-putting. Your thoughts?
Lou, you have nothing to worry about. I know this man personally.
I'm annoyed. It's a difference.
You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. This individual, you know, I've broken bread with this man in the White House. He's a complete loyalist to the president. He's a tough-heart charger.
The next time you do, ask him for the good manners to acknowledge that the man who makes the policy is the president of the United States, and first person should be reserved accordingly.
Oh, he knows that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, as always. Up next, the Department of Justice and the FBI briefing lawmakers on the origins of the growing Spygate scandal, already the worst in this country's history. Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch joins us next. Stay with us. Whether or not they were coupled, whether they were guilty of breaching our Constitution and law, my God, what is the debate about? It's clear and straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats at this point are chained to a story. And the problem is the story keeps shifting and rolling around and evolving because they can't get the story straight.
Because they can't get
of course, because they can't get the story straight. So you have to keep playing double talk word games to try to get around it. You know, the president, and I would encourage the president to do this, with a stroke of a pen, he can order the release of these documents. He doesn't have to talk about it or around it or kind of hope out loud that someone does something. He can have it happen with the stroke of a pen. It's discretionary on his part.
And as we look at what is happening, John Brennan writing all sorts of nonsense, whether it's on Twitter.
He's lost his mind. Yeah, I mean,
I couldn't argue the point, certainly.
He's disgraced himself. I'm waiting for him to post a selfie, you know, of himself wrapped in the American flag. He's gone off the deep end. And the reason why is because he's terrified. He's been caught. and more to be revealed.
And Robert Mueller, what state is his mind in? What state is his investigation? It's been 2 years with the FBI investigation that preceded it by almost a year, and now the more than a year since Robert Mueller was made special counsel and has carried out an investigation that's produced exactly nothing.
Yeah, now agents are purportedly, they've been dispatched to Israel to run down leads. I thought this was about
Incredible.
Russian collusion.
Yeah.
This is a slow motion deflation. He's going to have to make, get a couple of scalps to say he did what he did. But of course, half the indictments are Russians who'll never set foot in the United States. So I think I'd like to believe it's winding down because there is no there. But it's such a political football.
That also would presume a lot of integrity on the part of the special counsel, which
and
obviously
and his
is
staff, which is utterly compromised.
right. It's stunning stuff to witness this. T.S. Ellis, the district court judge, who is going to rule apparently on whether or not the special counsel exceeded its mandate and its scope envisioned at least under the August 2nd memorandum. We're still waiting, and he seemed to be the most animated and intelligent, frankly, judge to take up the issue. What do you expect, if anything at all?
Well, I mean, I believe what he says, and he's on the record from the bench expressing great skepticism about what the letter of the scope memo says versus the conduct of the special counsel. The 4 a.m. no-knock warrant against Manafort's house is a combination publicity stunt and threat. It has no realm. It has no Judge Ellis sees normal sort of existence in the ordinary scope of an investigation like this. And I think that Judge Ellis sees through it, and he knows that the cast of characters under Mueller will do virtually anything to get what they want.
Chris Farrell, Judicial Watch. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Lou.
Well, lying Obama intel chief James Clapper just can't stop himself. He runs his mouth even as Spygate blows up around him, and he validates many of the charges against him. We'll have reaction to his latest comments from former FBI Assistant Director James Kallstrom. He joins us here next. You don't want to miss a moment. We'll be right back. James Clapper claims the Russians swung the 2016 presidential election for Donald Trump. The former Obama intel chief's supposed bombshell comment contradicting the view of the entire intelligence community's formal assessment released after they thoroughly investigated the matter last year. And joining us now, former FBI Assistant Director, great American, and terrific friend of this broadcast. Good to see you, James. James Kallstrom.
Nice to be here, Lou.
Let's, I mean, I can't even believe the nonsense.
It's unreal.
From a former NDI.
Yeah. Does he forget what his testimony was before the Congress?
I guess he does. And I don't think it matters to him one whit whether he's caught in a lie or not.
Yeah, the man needs some psychiatric help.
And what about James Comey?
Comey is, we've been talking about, at least I have, among others, for about a year and a half now on Comey. Mm-hmm. And he's the guy with the biggest attitude and the biggest, he puts himself on this huge pedestal. The ego is just unbelievable. Yet, he has no common sense. And to think that he could pull off this whitewash of a fraudulent investigation on Hillary Clinton when the President Obama himself on at least 2 occasions said there's no evidence against her. She's done nothing wrong. I mean, you'd have to be a moron not to know that was just a phony thing from the very beginning.
Yeah, not to understand the dog whistle from the President of the United States about his former Secretary of State. He couldn't have been clearer. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And for the most obvious, I think the most obvious pay-for-play scandal in this country's history is the Clinton Foundation. And for the FBI to permit itself to conclude that they're not going to have an investigation, then try to sell the nonsense that, don't worry, we got it under control out in the Little Rock Bureau.
Well, it wasn't the FBI wasn't investigating the Clinton Foundation. I've called it, a bigger RICO case than the mafia,
right,
quite frankly. you know, more sophisticated and more money involved. You know, and it wasn't that the FBI agents didn't want to investigate it. It's, you know, these 5 or 6 or 12 or 15 or 20 or whoever with this number of
I'm afraid
sycophants
that
in
number is
Washington.
going to be a much larger
You know,
than we
maybe
ever
it's
assumed.
50, but I'll tell you right now, Lou, it's not the thousands of agents that are out there. I hear from tons and tons of these people. They are so upset about what is going on. You know, and some of your guests on this show, who I think I respect, you know, have talked about turning over the FBI to the Marshal Service. I think that's really a crazy idea. Everyone has their own idea, but that is not anything that should ever happen. We need new leadership. We need discipline. We need to get rid of the top-ranking people in there right now and bring a leader in there that can motivate and discipline the agency. That's what needs to happen.
Here's what I think, and I'd like to get your judgment about the future of the FBI as an institution.
Yes.
I personally believe it depends on how many agents step forward and say, under subpoena, what truly happened. If there isn't that residual within the rank and file of the FBI, I think that the institution is doomed. And by the way, I've got sitting here with the greatest respect and affection for you. I have to say that if they don't step up here, that they deserve that institution to be absolutely swept aside.
Well, I believe the vast majority of those that have knowledge, that have a reason to step forward, other than
That's
what they see on television every day.
Yeah.
And that's a small number, because Comey and those other sycophants brought that investigation and those other investigations close hold. You know, the agents themselves and the field officers, it was all taken away. I mean, they called up the New York office and shut down the Clinton Foundation investigation.
Right.
They shut it down in Little Rock. It's not the agents that are out there. It's this group of people that perpetrated this fraud on the country and thought they could get away with it. I mean, it's just it's unbelievable what we're doing to a fine institution. I spent most of my adult life there. You know, I know what people go to work for every day there in the FBI. Well, you know, and it's a shame that this has happened, that we've put a series of bad leadership, and I'll include Bob Mueller in that.
Absolutely. I mean, Mueller and
Comey was a
James
disaster.
Comey, both working in the most highly politicized administration. They politicized the Justice Department, the FBI, the Internal Revenue Service. The list goes on. There's no part of that government they didn't politicize.
Obama politicized the entire government.
Yeah.
You know, and he filled it with sycophants, and the people would succumb to the Stockholm Syndrome. And, I mean, it's just a tragedy what went on. You know, and guys like Brennan and Clapper and Comey.
How did we ever create... How could they
John Brennan, I mean, what a
This
horrible...
is a man who exudes evil.
Awful.
All you have to do is watch the man.
I know him. I can tell you that's a good feeling on your part, because he's really a psychopath, that guy. You know, and all his rantings and ravings and threatening people, you know, we got to clean this thing out.
Including the President of the United States.
Including the President of the United States. And here we've got the Deputy Attorney General threatening people. I mean, what is this?
Yeah.
Here's a guy who signed one of the renewals on the fraudulent Pfizer application. I mean, what is going on here?
And today we don't even know whether the Gang of Eight, the heads of the House Intelligence and Oversight Committees, actually got to see the documents of origin leading to the special counsel. We don't know whether they were just briefed about it or were they patted on the head. And
I mean, this conspiracy has been working for a long, long time.
Yeah.
You know, and this getting Donald Trump, whenever there was an inkling that he was going to win this thing, you know, there was a fifth column, a strong fifth column, and they're still there today. They're still there today.
I keep saying to folks, and I will continue to say to folks, you know, it's not just that this president has had the guts and the intelligence to drive this, but to imagine what he withstands every day, and has had to withstand from the moment he ran for this.
Yeah.
For this
I've known him for 43 years.
For him to stand up like he has, this country
and
he's
never not going to stand up.
Oh.
No matter what happens with these fools.
I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Jim, it's great to see you, and
God bless you, Lou Dobbs.
God bless you, James Carlstrom. Thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
Up next, Rhino Paul Ryan. further losing his grip and perhaps his association with the Republican Party, certainly its values. The first Republican lawmaker now publicly to call for his dismissal. We'll tell you who next. Stay with us. The congressman from Arizona becomes the first sitting Republican member of Congress to publicly call for the removal of House Speaker Paul Ryan, who's already retired, who is a lame duck by any definition, but is persisting in hanging on to the job he said he didn't want just a few years ago. Gosar calling the Republican leadership team toxic. He pointed to Ryan's lame duck approach on the midterm elections and his failure to stop Rhino Republicans from trying to force a DACA discharge petition onto the floor. Our next guest leading a group of 7 state attorneys general suing to end that DACA program. Joining us tonight, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Mr. Attorney General, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You want to end DACA, and I think that right now there are a lot of people in the country who are watching the Republican conference trying to figure out what in the world the House of Representatives really wants to do with it.
And I have no idea what the reason we sued and the reason we asked the administration to pull this back. President Obama did this unconstitutionally, outside of his authority. It's totally up to Congress if they want to deal with this. It's up to them. If they don't want to deal with this, it's up to them. But it is not in the purview or the power of a president to just change immigration law, and that's why we sued.
And the Supreme Court supports your view, and at this point, the states have every right to end what is an unconstitutional executive order on the part of President Obama, as you say. It would seem to me. It seems to me to be, frankly, an open and shut case. But one thing I've learned watching you, attorneys general, judges, and justices, is nothing is ever a sure deal.
This is a pretty sure deal. We have a very similar case with DAPA, same constitutional issue. We're in the same courts. We're going through the same process. I'd be shocked if we were not successful, both at the district court level, at the Fifth Circuit, and ultimately at the U.S. Supreme Court. It's clearly unconstitutional. Legal scholars have really settled on this and have seen what we've done in the past, and I think you'll see we'll be successful.
And can you rationalize for us the district court decisions that basically have impeded the Trump administration from acting?
So you're asking for a heroic effort on my part to explain these federal judges who, I mean, obviously this was an executive order by Obama, and now you have a president who thinks that's unconstitutional. He wants to undo an executive order. How can a judge step into that role and say that a president can't undo an executive order? To me, that's another separation of powers issue and a violation of the Constitution. These judges don't have the authority to do that.
And we're going to see that play out in court, and we wish you luck.
Thank you.
This is going to be extraordinary. The sanctuary cities, Texas also moving against sanctuary cities. Where do your efforts stand, and what do you expect to be the final resolution?
So we had our own sanctuary city bill, and we were ultimately sued by many of our cities, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, El Paso. And our law was really simple. It just allowed law enforcement to ask about immigration status, which had already been approved by the Supreme Court in an Arizona case. And then it also did this crazy thing and said that if you're an elected official, you have to turn over illegals who have committed crimes, which we think is obviously pretty reasonable in our state. And that's all it required. We were sued. We lost in district court. The Fifth Circuit reversed, and we've been successful so far in defending that law.
And how soon do you think there'll be resolution?
Actually, there may be resolution now. I'm not sure they're appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm not sure what the other side is doing. But right now, we have our law in place, and we're enforcing it through my office.
All right. Let's turn to the issue of immigration, and I want to get just your thoughts about what the House of Representatives represents with a discharge petition working against your obvious determination of both law and the interest of the state of Texas and the people of Texas versus a Speaker of the House who's a lame duck, who will not be running for re-election, who wants to stay Speaker and apparently keep his hands in all of the coffers of K Street, the Business Roundtable, the Koch brothers, the Chamber of Commerce, and Wall Street.
Yeah, so you're talking about the DACA issue? Yeah, absolutely. So, look, I don't know what Congress should or shouldn't do about this.
I agree with you. It could be a lot of issues when it comes to Speaker Ryan, but this one...
Absolutely. So, yeah, it really is an issue of constitutional power. It is up to Congress to do something, but they are not required to. This was an action by a president that overstepped his bounds. And all we're as law enforcement officers and legal people is saying you can't violate the Constitution. We can't have a president doing that. And now we have a current president who's ready to rescind it, and that's the appropriate action. And whether Congress does something isn't in my power to decide, but ultimately it is my power to go enforce the Constitution.
And we appreciate you doing so. I wish a few more attorneys general did that across the country, and even one who is the ultimate law enforcement officer of the country, the U.S. Attorney General. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Ken Paxton, Attorney General of the great state of Texas, a member of the Obama deep state, making ridiculous claims today about spying on the Trump presidential campaign. He says it's all, well, just business as usual. We'll take that up with Andrew McCarthy right after this. Stay with us.
This program is brought to you by Dell Small Business.
Clapper reaching a new absurdity as he attempts to justify efforts to spy on the Trump presidential campaign during the 2016 election.
Politicizing what is a legitimate activity on the part, and an important one on the part of the FBI. They use informants and have strict rules and protocols under this. Well, this is one of many techniques you can observe, you can use or bring to bear, the FBI can, in the interest of determining whether there was active efforts on the part by the Russians to infiltrate the campaign.
You know, we're going to put James Clapper to a very interesting test. My guest now has a new article on the real origins of the Mueller witch hunt, which I recommend to you in the National Review. Andrew McCarthy, a former assistant U.S. attorney, prosecuting attorney, contributing editor at National Review. It is great to have you with us. Did you ever think you would hear a national director of intelligence say that it was standard operating procedure to spy on a presidential campaign?
Well, once I heard he said that they did it for Trump's own good, I figured anything else could follow.
This man is delusional. I mean, he's certifiable.
I think we have a political or a constitutional norm where law enforcement and intelligence services are hands-off about our election campaign.
One would think.
And the only time that I think you could overcome that would be if you had very powerful evidence of very serious wrongdoing. And to say that there are a few people who are connected to a campaign who may be bad apples, who have baggage, who have whatever, that's something to be concerned about. It's not something where you would say the Trump campaign is in a espionage conspiracy with Russia to steal the election.
Wouldn't the analog to that be President Obama had a friendship with a terrorist by the name of Bill Ayers,
right,
and therefore he would be disqualified from being president because obviously he supports terrorism?
Well,
I mean, that's insane.
Well, I think President Obama's radical connections were a legitimate issue. We raised it as a legitimate issue in the campaign, but we also were mindful of the fact that the campaign is supposed to be decided at the ballot box by the public. So you make all your arguments, but you never should forget who the sovereign is.
Absolutely, but there are a lot of people right now who not only not forgetting it, they're trying to change who the sovereign is. In this instance, the President of the United States, in that legitimate, duly elected government. I mean, it is stunning. And I want to turn to your article because I think it is absolutely fascinating that this disputed origin of the special counsel keeps taking on new life, new iterations, new dates, certain as to when it began. Let me make that dates still woefully unproven and highly ambiguous.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny when you investigate the investigators, which is what we're finally doing here.
And thank God we are.
But it's not really different from investigating other people in this sense. When the story keeps changing, that means that whatever the truth is not something that they're comfortable about, right? So we first heard that the origination of the investigation was caused by this guy Carter Page's trip to Moscow.
Right.
And that kind of collapsed because of the dossier overlay on that.
An all but unknown figure, loosely associated with the campaign, at best.
Right. And then we had Origination 2.0, which is the George Papadopoulos story, this 20-something guy who hears from some guy who claims that he has Russian contacts, that they have Hillary Clinton's emails, and the next thing he's having a few drinks in a establishment with the top diplomat of Australia in Great Britain.
Yeah, think about that. Papadopoulos, who you point out, is even lesser known than Carter Page, is suddenly talking to the highest-ranking Australian diplomat in the United Kingdom.
Right. I don't know if he showed
a boozy conversation.
He may have showed him his pin from the Model UN. I don't know if that happened or not, but that story kind of doesn't pass the laugh test. So you keep asking, what is it? Where did this all get started? And I think, to their credit, the House Intelligence Committee under Chairman Nunes has some very interesting stuff in their final report, which was actually first caught by Kim Strassel. I wish I could brag that I did. Journal. But she noticed that on page 54 of the report, they mentioned that in the spring of 2016, FBI Director Comey briefed the National Security Council of the Obama administration on the Page stuff.
Right.
Now, what was the Page stuff at that point? We're talking months before this trip to Moscow.
The so-called late spring. Right.
So the Page stuff was, there had been an attempt to recruit Page in 2013, apparently by Russian spies, where he cooperated with the FBI and the Justice Department. They even used his information in their arrest complaint when they went after the spy.
So he would, of course, by FBI canons, be highly suspect because he was fully cooperating and patriotic in his response to the investigating agency.
Well, you never know, right? So, but what had happened when Comey had this briefing?
Yeah.
The main things that had happened is Page came onto the campaign. Trump announces his Foreign Policy Advisory Committee, right?
And that's what month?
I think that's March 21st. And then about 8 days later, Manafort comes onto the campaign.
And as you point out,
right,
the Trump campaign was under pressure to create a foreign policy cadre. I think you referred to them as the clerisy in your article.
Well, because the establishment Republican Party was not going to cooperate with Trump's campaign. So
jumping ahead just a bit as we wrap up, what is the takeaway here? That we have been lied to not once, not twice, and the fact is that we still don't know the honest and truth about, as if I think that may be slightly redundant, honest and truth, but an honest, truthful origin of this entire farce that has become the special counsel investigation.
We need transparency about how this got started. And if it turns out it got started because they were suspicious of these guys, I think they overreacted, but let's at least hear that. Let's put it on the table. Let's not pretend that there were other things that caused it.
Yeah, I can't bring myself to say they overreacted because they were such actors, and they have constructed such a fabric of lies at almost every juncture. They've phoned up a dossier. They've used a phony dossier to get a FISA court surveillance. Then they've renewed it. And the process has gone on. We have seen Clapper lie about it. We have seen James Comey lie about it, and the lies continue. Well, most recently today with the idea that spying on presidential candidates is normal, at least under...
well, whatever they did, it's in the FISA warrant. You can bet on it.
Well, can't wait to get to it. And as you say, transparency. It seems the president is going to have to make that judgment.
Yeah, I again wonder, let's get on with it.
Absolutely.
Let's get it out there.
Andrew McCarthy, as always, great to have you with us.
Thanks,
Andy. Up next, the attorney for a Trump campaign advisor who met with the FBI spy. We'll be talking with attorneys Victoria Tensing and her husband, former U.S. Attorney Joe DeGeneva, right after this. Stay with us. You don't want to miss a moment. Just when you think it can't get any crazier, Eric Holder, the first sitting member of any president's cabinet in history to be held in contempt of Congress, now weighing in on the spy scandal, the Obama spy scandal, the spy in the Trump presidential campaign. He tweeted this: more DOJ norms being eroded. Trump, a subject of the investigation, wants access to material related to the inquiry. His congressional supporters want evidence connected to an ongoing investigation. Time for DOJ, FBI to simply say no, protect the institutions and time-tested norms. To assess the madness of this moment, joining us, Victoria Tensing, Joe diGenova, the founding partners of diGenova and Tensing Law Firm. Great to have you both with us. Victoria, let me start with you. Your client is Sam Clovis. He apparently being approached by someone.
No.
Okay.
Lou, not approached, targeted. To me that he never would have met with this guy. He didn't know him from Adam, but he used Carter Page's name, so he figured that, you know, that was an all right person to meet with.
And, you know, as we're listening to this, and Eric Holder is talking about the norms of the Department of Justice being under assault. Joe, I mean, what is Eric Holder on?
You have to remember, Lou, you set this up perfectly with the history of him having been held, the only attorney general ever to have been held in contempt of Congress. His tenure was a disgrace. He was responsible for Fast and Furious. He lied to Congress repeatedly. He covered up an immense number of bad cases. He covered for Hillary Clinton. He set in motion the complete politicization of the Department of Justice and the FBI. And he has the unmitigated gall to criticize this president. This president is acting stellar in the face of incredible leftover lawlessness from Comey and Lynch and Holder. All of those people who ran the Obama DOJ and FBI are law enforcement disgraces. They've embarrassed the department. They've embarrassed the FBI. They've embarrassed themselves. They've set the FBI back 10 years, and there's very little that can be done about that. If Eric Holder thinks that that's a good norm, what he did, I think he needs to see a psychiatrist.
And on the same day, James Clapper protesting that this is a perfectly reasonable thing to do, to plant a spy on the part of the FBI in a presidential
but it's not
campaign.
a spy. It's not a spy. It's an informant. He was just bringing back information.
Just a guy hanging around the cloakroom.
It depends on what is, Lou.
Yeah, I know. Forgive me for not parsing. And Joe, your wife has corrected me twice, and I have to defer both times to her corrections. Very quickly, your thoughts about the president making the decision to demand an investigation?
Oh, absolutely essential. And in fact, the president has done what any president should do. When the Justice Department is being run incompetently by Rod Rosenstein and Jeff Sessions, the president brought them over to the White House for the third time in 2 weeks to tell them to act like adults, run the place, get the information that's necessary to get this investigation over. I applaud the president. He is actually setting a good standard for holding accountable members of his cabinet who are incompetent.
Joe, thank you very much. Victoria, thank you very much. We're out of time. Good night from New York.
From the Fox